We're kicking off with Raw, as Seth Rollins had a significant announcement during the opening segment of the show, as he revealed that the MRI on his injured leg indicated that he'd need surgery. An emotional Seth said that experts estimated a recovery period of 3 to 4 months post-surgery, but has vowed to return sooner and has vowed to keep delivering his signature curb stomp. Uncertain about the future, Rollins was interrupted by Imperium in the ring, and in a face-off with Gunther, Rollins urged him not to delay any actions he had in mind. Gunter, showing respect for Rollins' workhorse reign, praised him as a champion who brings honor and respect to the title, and admitted to being sad when he heard of Seth's injury. Ever defiant, Rollins fired back, proclaiming he cared little for medical prognoses and rehab timelines. He vowed to carry the championship into WrestleMania 40, where he'll retain his title. Gunter, delighted by the news, declared his intent to win the Men's Royal Rumble and challenge Seth this April, teasing a showdown of the World Heavyweight and Intercontinental Champions. This was a perfectly booked segment in that it gave us the big news from Rollins at the top of the show, and for the second week in a row, presented Gunther as a legitimate threat to win the Rumble. It also teased what would be a match of the year contender between the Ring General and Rollins, a prospect that should excite any fan. So Rollins is laser focused on defending the World Heavyweight Championship at WrestleMania 40, and ever since Survivor Series, all signs have pointed to a showdown with CM Punk. While Punk Rollins is the obvious favorite, there are some who believe Rollins could once again battle Cody Rhodes at WrestleMania, leaving Roman Reigns free for his showdown with The Rock. But what if WWE goes in a different direction and instead books a triple threat between Punk, Rollins, and Rhodes for WrestleMania Night 1? All three men have a claim to a main event match, and it would in theory allow WWE to have their Rock-Reigns match now and save a Reigns-Cody rematch for a later date. To win his first world title in WWE, the American Nightmare could go after the Visionary, and what do you make of this triple threat idea? Let us know down below. In the latest war of their deeply personal rivalry, the New Day and Imperium's Ludwig Kaiser and Giovanni Vinci settled none of the hatred between the two sides on Raw. The double countout was only the start of the action, as the fight spilled into the stands after all four men crashed through a table to put an exclamation point on the segment. The final spot, which saw the teams crash off the equipment cases, was a cool spot to end the chaos. Triple H and Creative had done a hell of a job building this feud into a strong program, with the intensity being on point, and deserve a ton of credit for what they've accomplished. This angle, if nothing else, has given the New Day a much-needed edge and provided Kaiser and Vinci something of meaning to do other than being the cronies for Gunther. The fact that the brawl that ended the match spilled into the crowd suggests that there is likely to be a gimmick bout, perhaps a street fight, that settles things once and for all. On commentary, Michael Cole announced that Kofi Kingston will be in the Men's Royal Rumble match, and later on, Kingston challenged Gunther to an Intercontinental title match next week. So, why is Kofi getting a shot at the gold? Well, in all honesty, it's likely a filler feud, given that it's been years since the popular star was involved in a singles title program. His last major program involved Daniel Bryan and the WWE Championship, and with it being 5 years since that program, this Gunther program is probably a filler feud. Fans can expect the dominant Austrian to come out on top when the two collide on next week's Raw, and that could lead into Gunther's next challenger emerging. Despite their history, Jey Uso has allied with sorts with the New Day for the past few weeks, and even prevented Ludwig Kaiser from continuing his backstage assault on Kofi last week. A post-match beatdown on Kingston could bring out Jey to make the save, and with reports of a Jey-Gunther match being discussed, perhaps the two will face off at Elimination Chamber Perth. In the most anticipated segment of this week's show, CM Punk and Cody Rhodes came face-to-face in the center of the ring for an explosive promo segment. The competitors, friends and Royal Rumble opponents, spoke of the late Dusty Rhodes and took a few digs at each other before Punk claimed to be more like Cody's father than Cody ever was. Instead, anyone expecting references to AEW or the issues that led to them leaving the promotion had unreasonable expectations, as both men have moved on from their all-elite past. Instead, the pair laid the foundation of their story by recalling history between them, and while that meant paying tribute to Dusty, it resulted in a tense stare-down to add intrigue to the Rumble match. More importantly, it planted the seeds for a potential showdown between two of the top babyfaces on Raw if Seth Rollins is unable to compete at WrestleMania and WWE needs a backup plan. It wasn't just the fans who were loving this segment, as after the promo, Triple H and Bruce Pritchard made it clear to the pair that they appreciated their efforts in the segment. The Backstage crew also gave the pair a well-deserved round of applause for what they achieved, adding intensity and drama to this weekend's event without a single punch being thrown. This week, WWE gave fans their first in-depth look at 2K24, and there's a lot about the game worth getting excited about. The new game will feature a 40 Years of WrestleMania edition with names like The Rock, The Undertaker, Steve Austin, Bret Hart, and John Cena, and others confirmed. In addition to the standard edition of the game, there will be a 40 Years of WrestleMania edition and a deluxe edition, but some fans have taken issue with the cover art for the game. Some have accused WWE and 2K of using AI to create the cover art, and on Twitter, the very real human cover artist Jonathan Bartlett responded to the accusation. Bartlett made his views on AI very clear with some profanity before saying people are quick to jump to conclusions without thought, and he will defend his hard-earned and learned craft. Cody Rhodes graces the cover of the standard version of the game, while the deluxe cover features Bianca Belair and Rhea Ripley, and despite what some claim, these covers weren't made by AI. But what do you make of the new game and its cover art? Let us know down below. Over to New Japan, and Kazuchika Okada's contract will expire at the end of the month, and after a handful of dates in February, he'll be a completely free agent. This marks the end of a run that began all the way back in 2007, and it should come as no surprise that WWE is interested in taking the Rainmaker on board. While speaking on a Fightful Select Q&A, Sean Ross Sapp was asked about Okada making his way to WWE at the Royal Rumble, but made clear that he will be under a New Japan deal at that time. Okada's contract will expire on January 31st, thereby not making him eligible for the Rumble unless some special deal is done, which is unlikely to happen at this time. WWE is reportedly eyeing up Okada for WrestleMania 40, and the Rainmaker has dreamt of competing at WWE's biggest show, but even if he debuts soon, it won't be this Saturday. During last week's SmackDown, Austin Theory's match with Carmelo Hayes ended abruptly after a move went wrong, and both men were reported to have suffered facial contusions. It was later confirmed that Theory had suffered a concussion, hence why the match was called off, but it appears that the youngest US champion has recovered in record time. On Instagram, Theory confirmed that he'll once again square off against Hayes on this Friday's edition of SmackDown, and said he'll give Hayes his 15 seconds of fame. Despite Grayson Waller's suggestion to pull out, Theory is determined to be Mr. All Day and handle business in the ring, no matter what happens to him. In the video, he dismissed the critics on the internet, emphasizing that he's ready to face Carmelo Hayes, and promises that A-Town will be put down in Miami. It's good to know that Austin Theory is now fit and well enough to compete inside the ring again, and we certainly hope that this rematch doesn't end like their last encounter did. Back to Raw, and in an in-ring promo, Nia Jax recalled squashing Rhea Ripley and Becky Lynch and vowed she'd crush both of their dreams by winning the Royal Rumble and going to WrestleMania. This claim brought out Lynch, who held nothing back, with her line, "Shut up, Nia, you dope," echoing fans across social media for the last 4 years. Lynch said that Nia has a target on her back and claimed that the women backstage didn't like her, while also adding that, "You've probably injured half of them." Lynch added that she isn't sure what she's going to enjoy more, winning the Rumble or watching Jax lose before Bayley came out in her first Raw appearance in 210 days. The last time Bayley was on Raw was on the June 26, 2023 show, when she accompanied Io Sky for a Women's Money in the Bank Summit ahead of the ladder match Sky would win. After talking about her own plan to win the Women's Rumble, the role model attacked Lynch, which led to a brawl between all three women that ended with Jax standing tall. This was a relatively one-dimensional segment that did nothing to further any ongoing feuds and accomplished nothing original that increased excitement for the 7th Women's Rumble match. With close to 25 years combined on the main roster between them, you'd think that these three would have a deeper story for Raw other than, "I want to win the Women's Royal Rumble match." Backstage, Lynch came face-to-face with Rhea Ripley, who told her to make other plans for WrestleMania. The three are talented talkers, but this segment disappointed given the star power involved. And do you think one of these three will win this weekend? Sound off in the comments below. Rhea Ripley issued an edict to Finn Balor ahead of Dominik Mysterio's showdown with The Miz, saying she wanted to see the aggressive side of the inaugural Universal Champion. There was also a backstage segment for The Miz, as R-Truth told Miz not to tag in and then warned him to watch out for Tom and Nick Mysterio. As for the match, Balor delivered a cheap shot to The Miz that set the A-lister up for the 619 and the loss, and post-match, DIY made the save for The Miz, teasing a 6-man tag for the near future. The match itself was a perfectly acceptable one, thanks to Miz's ability to work with anyone and Mysterio's consistently improving in-ring work, but there was perhaps too much interference. Despite this, it was still a solid utilization of everyone involved as the slow burn towards an inevitable split in the Judgment Day continues forward. Speaking of the faction, Damian Priest would cut a promo ahead of his main event against Drew McIntyre, but was donned in his Puerto Rico-inspired gear instead of his Judgment Day garb. Priest would also warn R-Truth that the Judgment Day would bring the hammer down on him and that he doesn't want anything bad to happen to him, further teasing the budding friendship. Between his choice of apparel and this segment with Truth, don't be surprised if we see Priest split from the faction sooner rather than later. And in the main event, the budding friendship between Damian Priest and R-Truth faced a major setback as Truth's distraction caused Priest to fall victim to Drew McIntyre's Claymore. The Scotsman got the win and built momentum for himself heading into the Royal Rumble, and this match gave Priest a loss when patience for defeats is wearing thin in the Judgment Day. After Priest's warning of the group bringing the hammer down on Truth, it may be Priest who is forced to bring the hammer down on Truth, setting up further conflict with his faction allies. The loss furthers one of the most unexpectedly entertaining stories in WWE, while providing McIntyre a much-needed victory ahead of the Royal Rumble. Will McIntyre win this weekend? Almost certainly not, but WWE and Triple H have done a good enough job that he doesn't appear out of place alongside favorites like CM Punk and Cody Rhodes. Now, this weekend's Raw served as the go-home episode of the Red Brand before the Royal Rumble, and there were some notable names backstage at the show. Prior to Raw, WWE filmed its main event taping in which NXT superstar Miles Bourne faced Raw's Brutus Creed, while NXT's Gigi Dolan would face off with Chelsea Green. These main event tapings allow WWE to see how an NXT star handles a stage bigger than NXT, so don't be surprised if we see more of these two on WWE Main Event. On the World's End media scrum, Tony Khan confirmed that Andrade El Idolo had left the promotion, and right now it's believed that a WWE return is in the works. Andrade's contract was actually supposed to end in 2024, but he clearly was allowed to leave early, and there was something major backstage that led to his exit. In a Fightful Backstage report, it said that a frustration situation led to Andrade's sudden change of direction from being relatively happy in AEW to immediately wanting out. They report, Andrade looks to be headed to WWE. He told talent he was likely staying in AEW. That changed just days before AEW World's End. We were told there was a frustrating situation which led to him effectively giving notice, saying, I'm leaving, which was in his contractual right to do so, as he had not signed a new deal. I know one had been discussed, but he did not sign one with AEW and was free to go after World's End. His original deal was 2 years, and it was extended due to injury time, and he was signed through the end of 2024. It's unclear what exactly this frustrating situation was, or who else it may have affected, but it's clearly big enough for El Idolo to immediately want out of his AEW contract. With a WWE return expected, Andrade will soon be spending more time on the road with his wife Charlotte Flair. And what do you make of this story? Let us know down below. Before the Day 1 Raw, it seemed destined that Cody Rhodes would dethrone Roman Reigns at WrestleMania 40 until a Brahma Bull-sized roadblock threatened to spoil Cody's plans. The Rock made headlines when he mentioned this sitting at the head of the table, hinting at a possible confrontation with Roman Reigns, but Rhodes won't let this get to him. When asked about The Rock in an interview with Mark Raimondi of ESPN, Cody Rhodes expressed his perspective on the situation, stating, I don't consider him in my way. Maybe he is, and I'm being naive to it. Maybe he wants to get in, I don't know, but I don't consider him in my way. Again, The Rock is one of the main reasons we're here today, nothing but respect. But also at the same time, I have to have the respect for myself to know where I'd like to go. It seems clear that either Cody or The Rock will challenge Roman Reigns at WrestleMania 40, but who should it be? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. On the Day 1 Raw, Giovanni Vinci's match with Kofi Kingston was called off when he suffered a concussion after taking a dropkick, and it was said he'd be out for a number of weeks. Well, a number of weeks have passed since then, and sure enough, Vinci has made a recovery as he was able to compete at the January 20th WWE Live event in Montgomery, Alabama. Vinci teamed with Ludwig Kaiser in his return match, but the pair would lose to the Creeds, as they would the following night at a live event in Jackson, Mississippi. During Vinci's absence, Kaiser had taken a more aggressive approach on TV, particularly targeting Kofi Kingston as an act of revenge, and it was great to see Vinci at these live events, and later on Raw. Not too long ago, Shawn Spears confirmed that he had left AEW and is excited for the future, and that future could be as part of TNA Wrestling. Fightful Select reports that Spears was at last weekend's tapings and had a 20-minute talk with TNA President Scott D'Amore at the gorilla position. Spears wasn't the only name around, as Mace, Mansoor, and Alex Zane were also backstage, and we might be seeing quite a few new arrivals in TNA in the months to come. More from Raw, and Ivy Nile looked to get revenge for her friend Maxine Dupree when she faced Valhalla on Raw, and the Alpha Academy member accompanied Nile for the match. The back-and-forth contest was short-lived and concluded with Nile delivering a middle rope bulldog, dubbed the Pitbull by Wade Barrett, for the win. The match was too short to leave an impression or be considered good or bad, though Valhalla has not had nearly enough ring time to shake off ring rust she gathered during her time out of WWE. Thankfully, her facial expressions and body language made up for it, and this was a fine showcase of Nile, who really should be doing something of note in the women's division. The singles run of Ivar rolled on this week with another banger, though it would have been more of a challenge to have a bad match with Chad Gable. Two of the more unsung performers on the Raw roster tore the house down, winning over the New Orleans fans en route to the Viking Raider getting the win. Valhalla appeared late in the contest to distract a surging Gable, a nod to last week's show where Maxine Dupree cost Ivar his match with Akira Tozawa. After Valhalla's distraction, Ivar's moonsault would score him the tainted victory that had fans biting on false finishes, proof that talented wrestlers working for fans' attention is still possible. The outcome suggests the feud will continue, but one has to wonder how much life is left in it given how long the Alpha Academy Viking Raiders program has already stretched on. Backstage, Bronson Reed laid down a challenge for Jey Uso for a match on next week's Raw, in what'll be a collision between two exciting up-and-comers on the Red brand. In women's tag team action, Shayna Baszler and Zoe Stark defeated Candice LeRae and Indi Hartwell, and were confronted by tag champions Katana Chance and Kaden Carter after the match. The champions would be ambushed by Asuka and Kairi Sane, who had Dakota Kai with them, and Damage Control stood tall to add build to the title match this Friday on SmackDown. And that was this week's Raw. And what did you think of the Go Home Raw before the 2024 Royal Rumble Premium Live event? Give your take in the comments below. In a recent announcement, Tony Khan confirmed AEW will be bringing back its ranking system, which the company used from its launch in 2019 until 2022. At the time, fans thought that online pressure had led to rankings being scrapped, as those on social media repeatedly pointed out that people with the best records weren't getting title matches. Instead, these matches would be granted to those in storylines, but it turns out that it was one particular person who led to the shelving of the ranking system. Speaking on the Bryan and Vinny show, Bryan Alvarez was asked about AEW bringing back the rankings and revealed that CM Punk talked Tony Khan into getting rid of them. As to whether the story will conflict with the rankings again, that remains to be seen, but Tony Khan is back on board with the rankings now that CM Punk is no longer All Elite. And we're ending today with Tama Tonga, who after his win at Wrestle Kingdom 18 said he'd be leaving New Japan to spend more time with his family, but not if WWE can help it. On Wrestling Observer Radio, it was made clear that WWE has great interest in Tonga, the adopted son of legendary tough man Haku, and perhaps we'll see him as a WWE superstar one day.